Okay, hey, welcome everybody. This is the CloudGTO launch day live stream. Super exciting. I've got a great sort of panel here put together with Fawn and Gabriel. Maybe both of y'all could sort of get an intro about who you are, and then we can jump into the meat of it.
Okay, now let me probably go first. Hi everyone, my name is Fon Quenti. You can call me Fon. I'm a serverless developer here at Serverless Guru, also a project manager for CloudGTO. And I'm excited. This is our public beta launch, so quite excited to see and to talk about CloudGTO and the work we've put in so far. Thank you. Gabriel, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, try now, Gabriel. No, not hearing you. Okay. Well, interim, we can come back, give Gabriel a chance to speak once the mic situation's sorted. My name is Ryan Jones. Founded Serverless Guru back in 2018. We were like a solo shop, just helping with building applications on serverless, using AWS, building serverless applications. Slowly, the company grew out, and as we were growing and building similar things for clients, such as client A comes to us and asks for a REST API. Client B also asks for a REST API. They both want serverless framework. They both want Lambda functions. They both want to use DynamoDB. The templates that started to get built up based on that, the structure and the flow of building those sort of Lego pieces and putting them together, all very similar. And that's the same across the entire board of people building serverless applications within, serverless framework, AWS SAM and so on. And so we basically started by building a templates repository at Serverless Guru, where we have, still you can access it at github.com/serverless-guru/templates. We have more than 100 serverless templates just able to be accessed and looked at. Copied, you do whatever you want with those. Well, based on that, we started running into a problem where, hey, we've got this REST API template, but so does two other people on our team, right? So which one do we have inside the repository? Well, let's say person A's REST API uses WebSockets and person B's doesn't use WebSockets. Okay, so let's add those as two separate templates. And then the next one comes in and one's a serverless WebSocket one, but it also has this one extra thing where it's using an API key. Do we add that in? Do we not add that in? It was very complicated. And so we ended up saying, you know what? Any templates that you have, push them into the repository. And if somebody uses it, great. But the problem that happened, and we've seen this happen as well at clients and across the entire serverless industry, is if the templates are not dynamic in the creation of them, then any standards that we're trying to set are much more hard to attain, right? So an example of that would be, a person trying to build a serverless application and build a REST API wants to get started, and they have a couple of options. They can look at an existing service, but then they have to pull apart all the stuff that they don't need. They can look at a template, but then they probably have to add additional stuff that they do need, or CloudGTO. And so what CloudGTO does is a dynamic template generator, you could say, right? At a very aligned level with my last analogy. And so what that would look like is you go into CloudGTO, you create a REST API, you add a couple of resources like DynamoDB, you add all the settings for your Lambda configuration, and automatically what's going to happen is it's going to generate code files and an entire project, which you can then use and then push out, download it locally, deploy it to your AWS account, modify it, tailor it, do whatever you want with it from there. That's completely on you. However, the quick start sort of method is the fastest, using this sort of CloudGTO method that we have now. So it's really cool. It's something that's been in progress for more than a year plus. And I'm really excited to have this in production and out for public beta. We have a huge team of people supporting us at Serverless Guru, making this initiative a reality. So I just want to say a big thank you to the entire team of people that are watching right now this live stream. And of course, also to Gabriel and Fawn, who have been critical in getting us to this point. So with that, I'll pause. Gabriel, is your mic back on?
Yeah, testing.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah,
Okay.
so if you
Yeah.
want to give
Yeah.
an intro, feel free.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm Wenke Gabriel Chidima. I'm from West Africa, Nigeria. I'm the senior serverless developer here at Serverless Guru, and I am one of the lead developers at CloudGTO.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome. Well, it's great to have both of you all on today. This is a cool moment, I think, in the history of CloudGTO and also Serverless Guru. I think that what CloudGTO is accomplishing is similar to what other people have tried to accomplish in the past. However, because of the type of work that we do at Serverless Guru we're very heavy power users of serverless framework. That's sort of our first route that we're taking in terms of thinking about infrastructure as code automation. So people do use AWS SAM, they do use CDK, they do use Terraform, they do use various other options. However, we're focused on serverless framework. We have expertise in serverless framework. There's a lot of people that do use serverless framework. And so we built a solution to help make that process faster. With that, I would love to show sort of a quick demo about what it looks like. So I'm just going to pop open a screen share here. So on this screen here, you can see our CloudGTO dashboard. You can create an account at app.cloudgto.com as well. We have a submit feedback button here. So you can click on this and you can actually tell us how your experience has been. You can ask for new features and things that you want to see inside the platform. An example could be, hey, it would be great if there was a CLI as well. Hey, it would be great if you had AWS SAM support or Terraform support, or if you could do step functions or event bridge as well. And then we can take that and prioritize it inside of our development team, the CloudGTO development team, and keep you in the loop as well as a beta tester, which is exciting. So what we're seeing right here on this screen is sort of our list services flow. So you can see that we have the name of an API already, the use case that it's leveraging, the date of it. We can pop in here and hit edit. You can see a breakdown about defining a service. So the name here, you can add an additional description. There's an IaC framework, which is disabled. As of right now, we only support serverless framework. However, please let us know what other ones you want to see, and we would definitely prioritize it. We have all the different regions for AWS. So we can select anything we want here. You can select Canada, you can select US East, or go into the Asia Pacific or into the EU. We have a default stage, which we just prefer to keep as dev. This is going to be the one that is your non-production deployment and probably just used by a developer. Some people call it sandbox. A lot of people do call it just dev. So that's sort of our default. We've got a couple different blueprints here and a kind of a cool feature. So as you click on these, you actually get to see a different architecture diagram. This is important because you're not just seeing the idea of that architecture, but in the background, all the inputs are actually being modified inside of the UI to make this happen. So when I click single Lambda per route, it is actually creating 3 Lambda functions, a DynamoDB table, and it does have 3 routes, and it is connected to a Cognito user pool. All that stuff is being put together so that you can go through the flow of creating a service faster. So now when I click the next button here, you can see that all these resources are already added in for you. And now you can simply go in and edit them. So you can say, for instance, I'm going to change the name of the user pool from main user pool to something that's more specific to my team. I can change the test email. So one example of this, for instance, is when you're working with CloudGTO, there's helper scripts that come along with it, because the goal is to increase developer velocity and to make developers move faster in their day-to-day tasks. So one thing that we noticed is that as we build APIs with API Gateway and Cognito, actually getting the JWT authentication token to log in, or not to log in, but to be able to make that request, it's tricky and it's time consuming. And so automatically when you build a REST API with CloudGTO, it comes with a helper script that will have the Cognito information already based on the naming that you put into the UI. And you can just run a CLI command and automatically get back to JWT. The same is true for the API key. If you enable that on the API through CloudGTO, you run the command locally, you get back the API key, run the command for Cognito authentication, get back to JWT, and you put those two values into your Postman or Insomnia, and you can immediately start making requests against your API and have authentication working right out of the box. Right now, this is a DynamoDB view. You can choose pay per request, provisioned. You can set the read-write capacity if you choose provision here. You can set up a composite key, which has a primary key and a secondary key, or some people call it, I think, a hash and a range key, or a hash and a sort key. And then also down here into the Lambda section, we can define our different Lambda functions. We can change the runtime. Right now, we are only supporting Node.js just because that's the bulk of what we do day to day. And we wanted to make sure right out of the gate, we're adding value, the most value possible. So, we're thinking about CloudGTO and the generation of the stuff that it gives you as best practice, as close to best practice as possible. So it's not just a generic spit some stuff out for CloudFormation or for a serverless framework. We're thinking through the full end-to-end experience, all the way from Webpack and packaging to pruning the Lambda functions, which is a problem that you run into much later on as you're working. And we also have memory options here, so you can modify these to your needs. Timeout. We also give you recommendations as you're building stuff, which we're going to keep adding on to. And the goal there is, for instance, if we're working with an API gateway API and the timeout, that's a hard timeout is 30 seconds, then we give you that as a recommended option, just because, it's from our experience, that's normally what ends up happening. Somebody might set a timeout of 5 seconds or 10 seconds on the Lambda, and then the API gateway cuts off and doesn't respond. And they're like, what's going on? And your processing was taking longer than 5 seconds. And by recommending this here, hopefully we save you some burden later on. You can also enable X-ray tracing very easily just by hitting true here. And that's going to install the proper packages locally and also give you the code that you need there. This is a really cool feature. So thinking about how to take it one step further from infrastructure as code, we're also thinking about how things connect together. So when you saw that architecture diagram of the Lambda function talking to DynamoDB, we have the ability to do some quick permissions here. So we're selecting the DynamoDB table, which I showed you in the last screen, and we're selecting the permission of create. And with that, it's going to already have IAM permissions on that Lambda function to talk to that DynamoDB specific table. And it's only going to be able to do create functionality, not read, update, or delete. And we're using a serverless framework plugin called the IAM role per function plugin. And that allows us to do that on an individual Lambda by Lambda basis. So there's a lot coming out of the box here. Although it looks simple, there's a lot of stuff happening in the background. I won't go through the rest of these as they're somewhat similar. For instance, if we jump into the delete item by ID Lambda, you can see that it only has the delete permission. So jumping to the next screen, you can see we have some routes here. So as you know, every API needs some routes. The first one here is /items with a post method. You can also select put, delete, get, or any. So any is an interesting one. And this is also kind of a, just because serverless framework allows for us to do this, we get to do fun stuff. So if I select any, then this one route will receive all traffic to this path. And I can make that path go straight to one Lambda, and I can build a monolithic serverless API just by clicking any here. And so we support that out of the box, and it will actually generate the serverless framework any information as well. The route type at the moment is only Lambda proxy. This is the default normally when people are building APIs with API gateway, they connect it directly to a Lambda. However, there is something called service proxy where there is VTL templates happening, and we are considering that as well. So stay tuned. If that's something that you want, definitely give us that feedback by clicking the submit feedback button up there. We can connect it to a Lambda function, and we have these listed here. So specifically for a post method, which is typically used for creating something, we have our create item by ID Lambda function. We also have the ability to attach authentication directly. So we have the main user pool, which is the resource we created in the last step. And so we can select that here, or we can have it as none. And you can actually have authentication on 3 routes, but not on 1 route. And that's supported as well. It's that's like really, really nice. You can also select cores. So if you're building a front-end application that's going to consume that back-end API, a problem that normally comes up is that once you make the API and then you build the front end and you're trying to connect it, you start running into these cores issues. Well, we take care of that just from the UI here. It defaults to true. If you don't want it to be true, you can turn it off. However, that's just another thing that we know happens. So we're just building it into the platform so you don't have to think about it. We also have API key true turned on as well. With that, let's hit next. This is the preview page. So you get to see a lot of information here about what's going to get built. You can see the resources and the types of resource. You can see the route information. And you also get different deployment notes. So for Mac specifically, we install the AWS CLI if you don't already have it. You install the serverless framework. And then all you have to do is run npm run setup. With npm run setup, it's going to install the node dependencies locally and also run a serverless framework deploy command that defaults to dev and I believe US East 1. So with those two, it's going to make the deployment. And you can also modify it, of course, to deploy to a different region and so on. And it's also based on what you selected at the very first step. So with that, you get a service up, and then you have the ability to take some of the local test files that we generate for you and actually make JSON requests to it. You also have the ability to add an API key, to pull the API key in. So I can run npm run get API key Mac, and it's going to actually look up your information from your deployed API that you just did using your profile locally, pull back the API key, and you can copy that into Postman. And finally, npm run get JWT Mac, and you get the Cognito JWT authentication token. And now you can start making authenticator requests to Postman and Insomnia. And if you did this entire thing and you use one of our blueprints, you could get something up in probably 5 minutes, roughly 5 minutes. So you can start testing and actually building on top of that API with Cognito authentication, DynamoDB, all this stuff within the first 5 to 10 minutes of actually working with this, which is super cool. And with that, we click build. Now this build process, it's taking in all the inputs that you just gave to it. We have a whole step functions workflow in the background that's processing all of this that the team like Gabriel has helped us build. And as a result, we'll be able to look at that code, inspect it in the browser. If we want to make adjustments, we can jump right back into the editor flow. We can make those changes, add additional resources. And something else that's really cool is we get an architecture preview. So I'll show you that in just a second. So this preview screen here, this is the code that actually got generated by our API choices. So you can see here we have a full folder structure, including a package JSON, a README, Webpack config. We're even using Serverless Compose, which is a Serverless V3, the latest way of building isolated services out with Serverless Framework. So when I say best practice, we literally mean it. There's a lot of work being spent in just the developer experience side of CloudGTO. So if we look at one of these Serverless Framework files, you're going to see a lot of these sort of things like params. You're going to see references using the Serverless Framework syntax. This is what we've learned has been the best practice way of building these in the most templatized way possible over the past 4+ years of building Serverless Framework projects for customers at Serverless Guru. As we scroll down here, you can see the functions. So we can just highlight this one function here, which is create item by ID. You can see the route to the handler file, timeout, memory. We're passing the environment variable already. So again, you don't even have to think about that. How does I made the DynamoDB resource, I made the Lambda, but how do I actually talk to DynamoDB and how do I pull in that environment variable? Well, we just do it for you out of the box. And the HTTP method here, Cognito authentication, private true, course true, private true, meaning that it needs an API key. And then we get the IAM role statements per function. So this first one here is put item permission and batch write item permission on a DynamoDB table. So you can see that listed here. We're also referencing the name of the DynamoDB table that you made in the UI. So it's specifically targeting just that DynamoDB table. Underneath that is the permissions for AWS X-Ray, which allows us to do the tracing because we enabled that in the UI. The rest of the Lambda functions are pretty similar, just with different DynamoDB permissions. You can see here, this one is an update item by ID Lambda, and we have update item. We also have put item there just because, we're developers. Sometimes, we put item into DynamoDB is sometimes the same as update item. It just depends on what you're trying to do. And yeah, and then these are the plugins that we're leveraging here. So serverless offline is already included for testing locally, these APIs. We're using a serverless deployment bucket plugin. This allows us to actually save the, 1 second. So the serverless deployment bucket plugin allows us to have the ability to reuse one S3 bucket across all of our different serverless framework files. We also have serverless IAM roles per function. That allows us to do the specific IAM permissions on each Lambda. We have serverless Webpack. So as we're packaging this up independently, you want your Lambdas to be as small as possible. And so by using serverless Webpack, we've found in our experience, you can reduce the package size of your Lambda by 80% or more. And so by already having this included, you're already getting 80% less package size, which means faster Lambdas out of the box. And when you think about this in terms of a development team, these are standards that are now built out of the box every single time. So a developer doesn't have to remember to put this in. It's already in. They can remove it, but in some cases, hopefully, why would they do that, right? And as we move through this more, you can see the source folder here, which is a common structure that people use when structuring serverless projects. You can see we have helper files already included out of the box, such as a DynamoDB helper file. And here it has things like put item, get item, delete item, and so on. We also have a response.js file. These are helper files for building responses. And the goal here is we're putting in our thoughts into how we would build an API using serverless framework and Lambda functions and so on with Node.js. However, the goal is to keep expanding on this to make it even closer to what we would consider like the best default possible, right? However, we're working right now, it's super exciting to include AI, which I know is always like, oh no, he's mentioning AI. But we actually are working this in at the moment. We've already done successful POCs in the background with one of our awesome developers at Serverless Guru named Almir. And what we've been able to do is generate prompts to then be able to generate application code based on a lot of the inputs being put into CloudGTO in a very seamless way that comes back and is able to generate a lot of these files for us, which means that as the platform keeps expanding, you're going to have the ability to input your own custom context, and it's going to generate that into those files so that you don't have to rely on what we think. You can actually tell an AI, text-based system what you want, and it's going to be able to put that into the finished product, which is really cool. I'll show you one of the Lambda files as well, one of the handlers. So out of the box here, there's some complicated, hey, what's going on here? This is really because when you select that blueprint of doing a full CRUD functionality, we're allowing for that CRUD functionality to immediately take place after you make the deployment. So once you make the deployment and you run the serverless, the npm run setup command, and that deployment finishes, take those credentials, put them into Postman or Insomnia to test the API, and you can start saving data into the database immediately because the Lambda functions don't come blank. The Lambda functions come working. And that's why this is a little bit more complicated code. This would be our rough V1 version of allowing for CRUD functionality to take place based on the options that you're choosing. So in this scenario, it's running a put item command against your specific table. But in the delete item JS file, it's running a delete item one. And as you can imagine, the get item by ID is getting the item out of the table and pulling the information out of the request. So with that, that's sort of the high level of how the Lambda functions and the core meat of our API works. We can jump down to the scripts folder here. We have one for auth Mac. In the future, this may be a JavaScript file. It may be put into a CLI for CloudGTO. It completely depends. We have a resources folder here. Each one of these is segmented by a different resource type. So here we have DynamoDB, we have Cognito, and we have what we would call our root REST API. So for DynamoDB specifically, if we open this up, you can see the DynamoDB table that we created. It's going to have the table name of items, which is something that we wrote inside of the UI. If you change the description inside the UI, it would show up here as well. If you modify to be a composite key with a hash and a range, this whole section would be modified as well. And then we have Cognito. So it's a pretty traditional Cognito user pool here. We've got the user pool resource. You have the normal things that you would see, such as a password policy. In the future, these ones will also probably show up inside the UI. However, it's very easy to change this once you download it. I could download this and then say, you know what, for my Cognito user pool requirements, I don't need symbols, so I'll change that to false. And immediately with that, you know, you can redeploy it and have it good to go. The API is a pretty standard one. So we are creating all the different CloudFormation ways of doing this. Honestly, it never changes, in my opinion. You probably will never touch this file. You may modify the Cognito file manually if you need to modify things like password policy or add in additional attributes. And for DynamoDB, of course, that's somewhat fluid always, right? So, you know, hopefully your team is able to spec out everything that's required for your DynamoDB table. But if not, you know, you can easily change that here. Do you have a default file? So those first initial things that you enter into the UI and when you're building a service, such as the service name, the stage, the region, maybe if you set the default Lambda timeout or memory size, and also the runtime, they all get saved inside of this one CloudGTO YAML file. But this is a really cool concept because what it allows it to do is all the different serverless YAMLs, they all pull from this one file. So for instance, if I wanted to change my service to be called, you know, instead of simple API -v2, all I have to do is update this one line with 3 characters -v2 and redeploy. And it's going to deploy in an exact mirror of everything that's in here based on just this 3-character change, which is based on the CloudGTO best practice way of building stuff, knowing that you probably don't want to repeat yourself, right? Like the core software principle of, you know, don't repeat yourself, dry programming. That's also built into this. We're thinking about those things, and any other ones that we miss, you know, tell us about it and we'll work those in too. And then every time that the build happens, it's going to keep reusing those same sort of standards. And it's a really beautiful thing. As we move down, I'll show one more thing, which is kind of unique about CloudGTO, is the serverless compose file. So the serverless compose file, it's a new feature that came out by Serverless Framework, which allows you to sequentially order your deployments. So if we have 3 different Serverless Framework files, if they don't have dependencies on each other, they'll actually deploy in parallel. But if they have a dependency on each other, then they'll deploy sequentially. And Serverless Compose handles all of that for us. So we have our API file here first. And you can see here that it's referencing a Cognito ARN. So that means that the API stack has a dependency on Cognito. So Cognito needs to be created first before the API. So the main user pool stack is created, and then the API stack is created. And then the DynamoDB stack, it doesn't have a dependency on anything. So DynamoDB and Cognito will deploy at the same time. And that's the beauty of Serverless Compose, is we don't have to think about any of this stuff. In the past, you'd have a very complicated bash file where you wrote out all the different steps for the deployments and how to tear it back down. But with Serverless Compose, it does the deployments for you and it does the removal for you without any extra work, which is awesome. So even outside of CloudGTO, a lot of the stuff that we're doing, you could do as well. And then here down below, we have all the different dependencies that are used. So these references go to the stack directly, and then we pull that in as the param value, which I showed at the very beginning. So all these, like the DynamoDB table name, it's being referenced from the DynamoDB serverless YAML. And so if I modify this DynamoDB serverless.yaml, it's automatically going to update when the next time I make a deployment because of the structure that we have set up. So that's a lot, I know. Thank you for bearing with me through that. I'm sure I can't see Fawn and Gabriel's face at the moment, but I'm sure they're smiling about it because of how long that rant was. But this is a really cool part here. This is the architecture preview. We're going to keep modifying this to be even better. However, out of the box, you already get an idea for what it's going to look like. And you may wonder, how is this being created, right? Where is this coming from, this information? And if you hover over something, you also get sort of an AWS SAM version breakdown of what it looks like, or a CloudFormation way of what it looks like. Well, we're actually taking all the stuff that you said, and we're actually building it ourselves, confirming that it works, and then generating an architecture diagram out of that, and then showing that in the UI. So that's why what you're seeing here is actually the real deployment of what will happen inside of the AWS console. In the future, what we're going to do, clean this up, create a better user experience there. But with that, that's sort of the high level of it. The last thing we do, we download it. It comes as a zip file. We open the zip file inside of VS Code or whatever code editor you want to use, and just follow the README. You run npm run setup, installs the npm dependencies, makes the first deployment, and just go step by step. And within 5 to 10 minutes, you have a working, Cognito authenticated API with cores already set up and already connecting to DynamoDB, making requests back and forth with Node.js. So it's a pretty powerful thing that we've put together here. It's super exciting to share it with all of you. I can sort of take a breath for a second. Maybe Fawn or Gabriel have other things that they want to talk about. And then we can talk about sort of the roadmap about, now that we're here, where are we going next? So with that, I'll mute myself.
All right. So yeah, thanks, Ryan. I think you did justice to the platform, and you really went into the reason why CloudGTO exists today. And just like any technology, I mean, the goal is to try to, I think, to do more with less, right? We want to do as much as possible with less until probably we get to the point where we can do everything with nothing, if that's possible. But I think CloudGTO is definitely, just like any software project, is still a work in progress. And we've got so many exciting ideas. We're testing generative AI capabilities, and we're looking for a lot of ways in which we can actually make this a tool of choice for developers, especially our internal devs. And I've had a couple of sessions with some teammates. I've gotten nothing short of positive feedback, and this is something that when you start using it for the first time, you see a lot of variables all over the place. But when you start using it, you tend to appreciate exactly all the effort that has gone into this, right? For me, when I started using the platform, I remember, when you start using something like AWS SAM or the serverless framework, and you want to jumpstart a project using their templates, this is kind of the first-hand approach. Like, the first step is similar to that approach, but kind of like on steroids, right? We're taking it further, and then we're adding together a lot of best practices that have been learned on the field. These patterns, these blueprints have been battle tested, and it's something that if you really want to go fast without putting so much thought into it, and if you're just getting into serverless for the first time and you not too sure on how all of these services interconnect together, how the integrations are, and how to make sure that your lambdas use least privileges to communicate with your data sources like DynamoDB. CloudGTO is definitely something that you should explore, and if you explore, you're just going to appreciate and understand exactly just how much effort. It might take you just a couple of minutes, but it's something that if you want to go line by line and try to ask yourself, why did they build it this way, it's definitely worth trying out. Yeah. So that's all for me from now. Thanks.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you, Vaughn. Gabriel, Marcelo, any points to add in for the audience?
I think you and Fawn already told like everything, but the thing that I most like in CloudGTO is that it generates the code the way we think, at Serverless Guru, and this is the thing that I most like, So in minutes you have a scalable solution, really simple. You can test your POCs, with your CEO or whatever, like in a few minutes. It's really nice. I really like it. And I'm really excited for the next features. I don't know if you already speak it all. I was a bit late, but I'm really excited. Really nice to be here.
Yeah, thanks, Marcelo. Yeah, we haven't jumped into it yet, so I think that's definitely the next one to talk about. Gabriel, anything on your end?
Yeah, sure. So as Ryan must have already pointed out, one of the things that CloudGTO makes sure to focus on is making things coincide. When you have like the default the YML file, in some project that you might get into, you will see there are different like as you have different configuration files, and then you have similar variables there that are actually referencing the same resource, and then sometimes it's just split into those different configurations files. But here at CloudGTO, we ensure that all these things are coincide, so you don't have to like look for you make a change in this file and then you deploy and then you run into another error, and now you go through start scanning through your myriad of files looking for where's this error coming from? Where's it coming from? But then at CloudGTO, what CloudGTO does, once you make a single change, it reflects in every other place that file is that variable is needed. And then as a developer, one thing we normally run into sometimes is when you have a use case or something that you have to build from scratch, and then after making your design, doing your templates, preparing for everything, you have everything your checklist, and then you're faced with the blank screen on your VS Code or your whatever editor that you use. I mean, that sometimes it's you just see that screen and it takes your morale down a bit. But at CloudGTO, you can just hop into CloudGTO, do some it will take you some minutes, and then you have something that you can start working on. So yeah.
Yeah, I would love to continue on that point. I think a big thing as developers is being in a state of flow. So when we're thinking about development, if we have to switch context ever, it can end up completely derailing our progress. It could slow down the entire day. If we have to go through GitHub issues and try to figure out, hey, I'm getting this error and it's not showing up properly inside of a GitHub issue or Stack Overflow, we're reading a whole bunch, we get distracted, that pulls us out of our development flow, and ultimately causes even more stress. So there's a lot of stuff that the whole point of CloudGTO is whatever you put into that UI, you're going to get something generated that works. The infrastructure will put together, it will fit together, it will connect, and it will deploy without any syntax issues. And as we know, when we're writing infrastructure as code, that's always a problem. Is, like Gabriel was alluding to, if you miss a tab, or if you include an extra semicolon and that's not caught locally, or if you add a name, which is a reserved something by DynamoDB or whatever else, you're going to run into an issue after the deployment happens and when you're testing. And then you have to go all the way back to try to figure it out, debug it, make the change, redeploy it. That whole thing causes delays through all of it. We also did some initial beta testing, and the sort of feedback that we got is that in some cases, let's say with a newer developer to serverless, CloudGTO could accelerate them by up to 40 to 60 hours, which is really insane. So building what we just built, obviously I was going through trying to explain every detail. If you went into the UI and you click the blueprint for single Lambda per route, and then you just click continue build, within 5 minutes, you could actually have the code deployed and running. And that would have taken somebody newer to AWS or newer to serverless. They might not even obviously know how to connect all those things together in terms of the way that we're writing it out. Potentially 40 hours of time. And that's a lot. That's an entire week. That's 5 days of productivity every single time you build a service. And it's important to note that because, as we're building more and more things, the faster that we can do that process, the more we can focus on what's really different, right? And the same thing that AWS talks about, I think it's undifferentiated heavy lifting. When we're thinking about building a service, the REST API, every company that's out there probably has a REST API, let's be honest, right? Unless they're a startup that just happened and they're using GraphQL only, right? But everybody normally has at least one REST API. And with that, they're 80% the same. And that other 20% is where a lot of the work actually comes in. So the faster, by speeding it up, we're not taking away time from a developer. We're not removing jobs. We're not doing anything like that. We're just moving you to that 20%. So you can focus all of your time on what's actually different about what you're doing. And the rest of it, you can just sort of go, okay, great. I don't need to worry about it. I can move forward. But, and it's a really big point, we're not locking you in. And it's not a black box. So other solutions that are out there, they would have given you a CloudGTO framework, which locks you into using it. And you can't just pick it up and move it or do anything else with it. You have to use all the tooling that we made. And if we don't support something, you can't do it. And if your team's already committed to using this and you hit a roadblock 3 months in, now you've got to sort of backpedal and pull everything out. Serverless framework is open source. It's well established. I would say it's the most established infrastructure as code on the market for serverless. And we're generating into that. And you can pick it up and you can modify it. You can do anything you want with it. And at no point, even that YAML file called cloudgto.yaml, that's just a reference file. It's not something that locks you into using it, right? So I think that's a beautiful thing. So we're hoping that, you find that exciting as well. A product that's speeding you up without locking you in. And if you're getting that boost and you're saving that 40 hours, then hopefully you're willing to pay for it. That's our hope with CloudGTO. That's the whole point that we've sort of put this together. Yeah. So on that note, let's talk about some new stuff coming down the pipeline. Maybe Fawn, maybe you could give an idea for sort of the app sync stuff that we're talking about in GraphQL side. So we're moving from REST API use case. Now we're talking about GraphQL. Very exciting.
All right, great. Thanks, Ryan. So we are looking deeply into how we can leverage GraphQL APIs using AWS AppSync, of course. And we are building heavily, using the JavaScript runtime for building resolvers, which is from what we've seen in the industry is the direction that AWS is moving towards. And in a couple of weeks from now, we're going to have the capability to also build, GraphQL APIs using a CloudGTO platform. Is the next thing that we're working on that is quite exciting. And of course, there's no point in me telling you why GraphQL APIs are important, especially when it comes to web and mobile applications. We all know the use cases for GraphQL. So yeah, that's something that we are also finalizing on. We're currently doing some testing. And for those who really love AppSync, you can also use CloudGTO, but just not right now. So just stay tuned. And as soon as that functionality is available, we're going to let you know.
Yeah, and I wanna jump in real quick before Marcel or Gabriel, just to say, when we're talking about adding in GraphQL and AppSync, we're not talking about just building the CloudFormation to do it. We have some of the best minds, I would argue, in the world, period, at building AppSync and GraphQL APIs in a serverless way on AWS at Serverless Guru. And we've completely designed the flow to fit into the best practice standard of May 19th, 2023. And that's a really critical thing, but I think it's going to be, it's going to blow people away when they actually see how much thought we're giving this. And, it's all just to make the developer experience better. And we have ideas happening every single day. Another one of those is the inclusion of things like ChatGPT, so, oh no, ChatGPT came in, it's going to take all of our jobs, it's going to make, us, et cetera. But when it comes to using it for certain things, we've been able to see really big improvements in terms of debugging and just getting back questions that would have took us a long time to Google itself. Marcelo knows this well. I remember Marcelo telling me a story about solving I think a SQL problem. Was that what it was? Yeah.
Yeah, it was a SQL problem. A query took in like 13 seconds, and I just asked ChatGPT and got one like 0.8 seconds, all working. Like I just copy and paste, and it solved my life.
Yeah, exactly. So it works really well when it's sort of in a very narrow focused thing that you're asking for. And so in that way, we can then continue to expand the user experience of CloudGTO by saying, okay, well, now we're generating all the infrastructure, but what about the application code itself? So with that, we can say, hey, this Lambda function will connect to DynamoDB. It's going to pull back that item. It's going to do a for loop over it. And then I need to make an external API request. Can you build me the helper functions? Can you build me everything that's required to make this happen? You're going to put that context into CloudGTO, and that code is going to automatically show up in the project bundle. And if you don't like it, you're going to be able to swap it out in the preview page to modify it again and again until you like it at a great degree. And then from there, sorry, I heard someone screaming outside. It's pouring down rain here and where I'm at. So sorry about that. But yeah, maybe Marcelo, maybe you can keep adding to why this sort of feature is going to be impactful to the future of CloudGTO.
No, I really love ChatGPT, and also I'm working closely to GraphQL like recently, and something that I like to work with GraphQL and ChatGPT is sometimes you want to integrate, do an endpoint or something like that. You have the JSON, so you just take this JSON, send to ChatGPT and say, okay, I want an AppSync type based on that JSON, and it's like already, you just need to copy, paste to the file, deploy the AppSync, and this is it, like all working, so it's really nice. I think for this kind of stuff, it really, you gain like a lot of time, it's really awesome because sometimes it's a repetitive job, it's the kind of work that sometimes you lose the focus, it's like a boring work, that ChatGPT just do that for you, like out of the box. You just need to check, okay, it's all good, proceed. So I really think that ChatGPT will put like CloudGTO on steroids, it will be awesome for us. I'm fully trust on that.
Yeah. And Gabriel, I know we talked about a couple things, from GraphQL to ChatGPT now. Any thoughts from how you're seeing things? Anything you want to add context on?
Is it has reduced what the mental stress it takes to when you like Marcelo has already mentioned, when you're doing something that is, I mean, you know what you're doing, right? But you have to repeat this and you have to just go through this again. Sometimes it gets boring, but then ChatGPT is there. It pulls off that load and it speeds up your work, and everything is going fast. So yeah, and having this on Cloud GTO, it does not just give you, it does not just reduce the workload or whatever or whatnot. It also gives you the flexibility, like the feature that we're currently developing for the ChatGPT prompts. It gives flexibility. So it's something that we are very excited at rolling out.
I love the possibilities of all of this. And what we're also thinking about, which is something you can give unique perspective to the viewers of this and the beta testers. We are in public beta now as of this morning, and you can sign up for an account and you can start using it. Give us that feedback. One thing that we've heard from other people is, for instance, hey, when it comes to REST APIs, I have this open API spec, or I have this Swagger file, and I've got this entire schema that I built. Now, how do I use that? Is there a way to use that with CloudGTO to build up these like UI fields and add all those resources in, build a route so I don't have to manually do it in the console? And the answer to that is we're working on it. We've thought about it. We're thinking about it. It's something in our backlog currently on the roadmap. And once it's there, you should be able to upload your Swagger file or your open API spec and be able to see all the fields populate then build it and have an entire working REST API with all the different routes that you wanted already ready to go. Of course, nothing is magical. That's where ChatGPT comes in. And then you go into the Lambda function field and you say, I want to do this, I want to do this. And out of that, I mean, man, you might be like 85% of the way done of building out this pretty complicated API. That last 15%, obviously, if anybody listening works at any clients that have other humans at it, human-to-human interaction is still required with CloudGTO. Working with teams and collaborating with them to understand internal integrations. CloudGTO is not a magic pill in that way. However, it will get you to there faster, and then you can have those meetings with the various people on your teams. Yeah, super exciting there. Any other sort of things that y'all want to flag, new things that are coming up, ways that you think CloudGTO is exciting or useful information for the audience?
No, for me, I'm just waiting now for the next steps, for the new releases. I'm really excited to deliver ChatGPT, GraphQL, everything. And for sure, we have more surprises to come, right? But it's secret yet. So I'm really excited to be here in this journey with you guys.
Amazing. Thank you. Vaughn, Gabriel, any thoughts from Yelton?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm just excited. I mean, no matter how much we try to build, when we eventually get feedback, we're going to, build things, in a way that actually responds to what our users want, right? So we are really excited. We are encouraging everyone to try out the platform, and our goal is just to help you, not spend too much time figuring out, the infrastructure templates or the infrastructure code, so that you can actually focus on the features that actually bring value to your stakeholders or your end users, right? So that's one of the things that we're trying to achieve here. And we are here. We are going to also work with you guys closely. So please try to use the platform and provide feedback. And when a platform is just being released at this particular point, the first people that provide feedback will probably be the first people that get your their feedback taken seriously, right? So we might as well just dedicate a lot of time to fixing something that is going to make your life really easy. So yeah, so just excited, and I'm encouraging everyone to try out the platform and provide feedback. Thank you.
Yeah. And as fun as already mentioned, is CloudGTO helps you focus on what actually matters, what is different in what you're doing. So the whole thing that is the same or similar, you don't have to worry about that. CloudGTO helps you to handle that. And working on CloudGTO itself, it's been a very exciting journey. Working with great minds and thinking about coming up with stuff, making stuff work. It's been exciting, and any way that we can help you lift those repetitive tasks or anything that is not specifically tailored to what you're doing, just give us a comment and we will help you do that.
Amazing. Yeah. I just I have a family member and they just said, hey, you should look outside. And I was like, okay. And apparently there's like 3 or 4 feet of water happening here. So I'm happy that my Wi-Fi has not cut out. Launch day to remember, definitely on my end. Today is really amazing. I really appreciate all of y'all for jumping on this panel and all of y'all watching. It's a huge moment for all of us and the entire team at Serverless Guru as well. And it's cool because, Serverless Guru is a consulting company. We help in all the ways that CloudGTO helps, and we also help with the human-to-human side, which is sometimes the hardest lift, We have the expertise to understand where the gaps are and help attack that. However, we also have very innovative and world-class talent at Serverless Guru with ideas about how to build things and improve developer experience. And this is a culmination of that belief and that investment into it And I'm really excited about the future and other products that we can keep building at Serverless Guru and keep growing out based on just seeing a problem and having the ability to think of a solution and then putting time and energy into doing it. With that, I guess if there's any comments or anything from the chat, maybe Jonathan could jump back in and sort of give us an idea there. Otherwise, I think we're towards the end here.
Hey guys, yeah, there is one question. Let's see. I'm gonna go through the comments and find it. I'm pretty sure it's from Aka. Yes, there we go. Can we test the generated code locally or only after deploying it to AWS? I'm not sure if that was answered throughout the course of the webinar, but just wanted to throw that out there and have you guys answer it. So yeah, I'm going to hop back off.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. So can we test the generated code locally? The answer is yes. Out of the box with Serverless Framework, it allows you to actually test Lambda functions directly by just making a very simple JSON payload. So I can have it do serverless function. I believe it's serverless function test. I don't have it in front of me. I should know that off the top of my head probably, but let me check the README. I'm looking at you can't see it, but I'm looking at the CloudGTO platform right now and then going into the README to look at the other command section of the README that we give every deployment. And to test locally, you have to run serverless invoke local, and that's going to invoke the local file without thinking about the deployed version on AWS. Or you can run serverless invoke without the local command, and it's going to test your actually deployed Lambda function using that JSON payload. And so that's a very easy way to test it locally. We also include the serverless offline plugin, and you can look up the serverless offline plugin documentation, and you can actually run sort of a local server, and you can actually make those requests to it. In the future, we might expand out our local testing suite to include things like DynamoDB and RDS and so on. But right now, that's the way to test Lambda functions locally with our setup currently. So yeah, if anybody has anything else to add to that, please jump in. Okay, all right. Well, I think with that, I don't believe there's any other questions. Maybe we can do a round robin. Final thoughts, Gabriel, Marcelo, Fawn, before we close out our 1 hour webinar here.
Yeah, let me go first. I just want to say to anyone who wants to try out the platform, I am always available to give you a walkthrough. So just reach out to me on Slack or on Twitter. I'm excited to actually help you make your development work easier in any way that I can. Of course, just by letting you know how to use the platform. So yeah, excited for anyone. Reach out to me anytime, drop me a message or call me. I'm always open and ready. Thanks.
Right, Marcelo, Gabriel, any final thoughts?
I will make fun words mine, so anything I can help, please get in touch. I will be happy to help. And I'm really excited with the next steps.
Awesome.
Yeah. I'm also available. I'm also available for any questions or any directions or anything. And we do have some more cool features there, like using some resources as triggers there as well. So you can just do how to check them out.
Amazing. This is great. Thank y'all for volunteering your time. I want to also say to the viewers, this is a way to get direct access to Serverless Guru people behind the scenes that are actively solving hard problems in production, and using the CloudGTO platform is sort of a way to say, hey, Marcelo, I'm trying to build this service out, but it's not working. And also, what do you think about that? And then maybe Marcelo might give you a little bit of, sprinkle of insight there that, that you can sort of get for free there, which is cool. Also, anybody that gives feedback to CloudGTO, to all of us here and the team behind the scenes of the panel right now, we're going to do a swag release We also have the ability to feature you on the website. So if you give us really good feedback, one, we can sort of build a platform around what you want and what your development team needs. Also, if you're an individual contributor and you just want some free stuff, that's a way to do it as well. So, and also, you probably know the Serverless Guru marketing machine. We have the same sort of CloudGTO marketing machine, which you probably saw on Twitter getting flooded across, many different people and everywhere. The cool thing about that is, if you help us with really good feedback, likely you're going to get blasted across a bunch of channels for that help. So with that, I've got pure chaos happening outside, and I think that's a natural close to it anyways. Thank you all for being on the panel today, and thank you for watching. This has been the CloudGTO launch day webinar. We're super excited and really excited for the future. Thank you, everybody, and see you next time.